you so much. How is everybody doing? Doing okay? All right. So I'm in this very coveted position of being right before you in lunch, but I also get to be the token woman on the agenda, so address the diversity box. I'm checking that diversity box, so thrilled with that. And just full disclosure, a couple things. One, I can't stand being behind a podium, but there is no set mic to wander around, so here I am, but I think it puts a barrier between me and you, so I'll look forward to discussions during the break. But second of all, and this is full disclosure, I get really nervous and uncomfortable talking to an audience filled with publishing executives and industry experts, because that is not me. I mean, I've only been in this industry for 2 years, and so if you're expecting me to have some great publishing revelations today, you're not going to hear that. What you're going to get is an outside-in view and stuff that I've learned over the past 2 years, and probably the stuff I've learned in 2 years, you guys have all forgotten. But anyway, so what I'm going to take the approach is really looking at this and talking about publishing much more from a business perspective. And I consider myself a student of business. I'm a crazy, voracious reader. Of course, I read a lot of crap, but I also read a lot on the business side because I am fascinated by businesses that win, as well as businesses that fail, because there's just an amazing amount to be learned by doing that. And I also have had, as Bob mentioned, the benefit of working in multiple industries. He said Verizon, it's Verizon, huge telecommunications company, but Blackboard, Rosetta Stone, actually worked for Xerox way back in the heyday. Every single one of those businesses have been disrupted. Every single one of those businesses have gone through transformation, and so there's a lot that I've learned, both on the good side and on, from kind of the school of hard knocks, that I think could be beneficial. So that's kind of the approach that I want to take today. One of the things that I found with working in multiple businesses, I mean, in publishing, it's interesting, we all seem to think we're very unique. We're not unique. Really, at the end of the day, businesses are remarkably similar. And so it's really important to understand lessons learned outside the industry. So what I thought I would do is I'd start with a quote, and everyone in my organization knows that when I do these town hall calls with the research team, I always end with a quote. But because today is such an important day for multiple reasons, I'm going to start with a quote and I'm going to end with a quote. And I like quotes because they get you to stop and think. And I think this is kind of a profound one, so hopefully it's not a letdown, because there's probably not a lot of other profound things I'm going to talk about. But basically the quote is, the past is your lesson, the present is your gift, the future is your motivation. And to me the key thing is when you think about the past, it's behind us, we cannot change it. All we can do is focus on what we have today, and as part of focusing on what we have today, make sure we're understanding what our industry is, what our market is, who our customers are, and a lot about ourselves, because when you do that, your chances of being able to understand how you drive the future in the right way is a heck of a lot clearer. So that's just, again, a stage setter in terms of what I want to talk about. But in essence, basically, the kind of game plan in terms of for the next 25 minutes or so is to talk about kind of 3 core areas that are core to building our future and driving our motivation for the future. And the first is all about adaptability. And when I say adaptability, I'm always thinking agility. Next is all about, you hear the word sustainability. My words, play the long game. You always have to be playing the long game. And lastly, collaboration, and that's going to be really important to the discussion today. And I think Robert Jan talked to it a bit, Rush talked to it a bit. But basically, when I think about where we are from an industry perspective today, I mean, we are facing incredible challenges. We are in the midst of disruption. And one of the things that I have learned when you're dealing with disruption, there's basically 2 things you could do. One is you could just cross your arms and say, I'm not changing, I'm not going anywhere, this has worked, I'm going to stay there. And the other one is you could think about embracing and adapting and driving to a different future. And I think some of the things that I'll talk about today might lead you to what probably makes sense here. Okay, does that sound okay? So let's start with adapting. And so to me, when you think about changing markets, which we all are in, and candidly, I don't think there's a single market out there that's not changing. You really need to be part of that change. You need to adapt to it, and even better, you should be driving that change forward, not just letting it drive you. And so that's been the core since I've come to Wiley. What we have been talking about and focusing on is how do you drive that change? And there's so many good lessons in the industry, and I wanted to share outside of our industry because there's some cool stuff we could learn from it that will help us. And my goal today, if everybody walks away with one different thought from my discussion today, I will consider it a success. But these are 3 brands up there I think everyone should know and recognize. So wonderful Kodak. Remember Kodak? Kodak was the brand, and that has to be in all capital letters with an exclamation point, the brand in film. And what you might not know is Kodak they actually developed the first consumer digital camera. Did everyone know that? All right. But they decided not to launch it or sell it. Do you know why? Any idea why? It would erode the film revenue. Boy, was that a smart decision, okay? So, but let me give you an idea of what the effect was. So in 2005, their revenue was $11.3 billion. 2017, it was $1.5 billion. So, interesting parallel there. Failure to adapt to changes that are going on in the market and what the implications are when you don't adapt. Nokia, and I know Nokia well because I was in the telecom industry. And Nokia was well known for having a great mobile phone, incredible mobile phone. Nice design, you know, sleek, worked well. They took great pride in it. They had a good user interface. And matter of fact, customers never complained about their user interface. So Nokia felt, why do we need to change that interface? It's good. No one's complaining. Fast forward, Apple came out, introduced a brand new user interface that was as intuitive and simple and clean in design as you could ever imagine. And so what happened to Nokia? They pretty much were left in the dust. So Nokia, and this is interesting in terms of from a time frame perspective, their phone unit sales in 2010 were 120 million phones they sold on an annual basis. Last year, 20 million, okay? So once again, interesting lesson learned. They thought because it wasn't broken, let's not fix it. It's good. Why should we innovate and go there and take it to the next level? And then Yahoo, and it's interesting, Yahoo, I worked a lot with Yahoo when I was at Verizon. As a matter of fact, I got to know Terry Semmel, who was a CEO at the time. I worked closely with the CMO because I was running the broadband business at Verizon and they were our ISP partner. Anyway, Yahoo was at the peak of their game in 2002, 2003, even 2004. They had loads of users, loads of eyeballs. We all know how eyeballs turn into dollars. Things were going great. What you might not know is Terry Semmel, the CEO in 2002, had a discussion with Google. He had an opportunity to buy Google in 2002. I mean, obviously that didn't happen. That's because everything was going great. 2006, he actually had an offer to buy Facebook, $1 billion, a little over $1 billion. This was 2006. And they came close to doing a deal, but then Terry Semmel thought, yeah, that's probably too much, dropped the offer. Zuckerberg walked away. So fast forward, 2016, my old alma mater, Verizon, they bought Yahoo for $4.8 billion. Okay, Facebook's valuation, anyone know what Facebook is worth? $400 billion. So, okay, so another opportunity of, you know, not paying attention to the market. So really that underlying thread across the board is you've got to truly understand your customers' needs, both met and unmet, and figure out about what's going on in the market and if there are ways that you could adapt to it and even drive it in a different direction. And also always remember, you gotta keep continuously improving. Just because it seems good, there's someone out there that's gonna figure out how to do it better, so you damn well better should figure it out, better should, whatever, figure it out yourself. And so, really when you think about, especially when I think about the #1 driver of disruption in a marketplace, to me, it is all about unmet customer needs. All right? And if you think about our market, unmet customer needs, boy, do you think there'd be a Sci-Hub and a ResearchGate if we as publishers were meeting our researchers' needs? And it's interesting, when I think about disruption, probably one of the best examples externally of disruption, Uber. Wow, look what happened to the taxi cab industry. Who was better positioned to do what Uber's doing than the taxi cab industry? They had the drivers, they had the fleet. But all of us out there as consumers, no one liked the fact you had to stand on the street and wave your arm, maybe in the rain, knowing you had to catch a flight, you had a meeting, you had a doctor's appointment, and other people were raising their arms. And so the minute a smart company came around and said, holy crap, there's a huge need out there, there's something we could do about it, there was Uber. Taxi industry is pretty much left in the dust. The only thing that makes me sad there is I love London taxi cab drivers. They love to chat to Americans about politics, especially these days. But also, I mean, when I think about background in telecom, I spent 24 years in telecom. And when I think about the transition from the wireline business, you know, hooked to a physical structure to talk on the phone, and then going to wireless, there were quite a few companies out there that did not make the transition. They refused to think that a phone tethered to a wall wasn't going to be the primary source of communication. Those companies are not in business today. The ones who embraced it are all thriving in the market. So again, other stories in terms of you've got to be able to meet your customers' needs, and you've got to understand on a deep level what those ones are that you potentially aren't meeting, and maybe they don't even realize their needs. So when I think about all of us, and specifically when I think about Wiley, our big discussion has been the most important customer to us that needs to be our North Star is the researcher. And, you know, a lot of us probably say, well, why the researcher? I mean, publishers get their revenues predominantly from libraries. But if you really think about this ecosystem, the start of the food chain and the end of the food chain is the researcher. And if we didn't have the researcher, we would not even have an industry. So to me, the most important thing we need to do is focus on what her needs are and making sure we're going to make her as efficient and effective as possible. And candidly, when we do that, don't you think the funders will be happy? I mean, time is money. I mean, there's a tremendous opportunity there. But, and this is the interesting but, when you look at what's going on right now, and you look at how researchers conduct their life, we have not been keeping pace with all the changes in research behavior that have been going on. I mean, let's face it, if you look just over the past decade, how much has technology changed over the past 10 years? Like it's light years different in just 10 years. How much have we as publishers changed in how we're utilizing technology to enable the researcher? I mean, let's face it, still the research artifact is a flat PDF. Oh my God, how crazy is that? And then when you think about our researchers, I mean, first and foremost, they're people, they're consumers, and their expectations in terms of technology and what's important to them is based upon their experience as a consumer. There's nothing easier than shopping online. There's nothing easier than just a regular search with Google. So a researcher expects things seamless, easy, anytime, anywhere, any device. Do we offer that to them? But that's pretty basic. Again, Sci-Hub's out there, they're offering it to them, not the way they should be or we want them to, but there is an unmet need. And of course, even beyond that, and I think it's a lot when you think about Plan S and the discussion that Robert Jan had, there's underpinning all this is this big movement towards open science, because at the end of the day, that researcher wants to get their good quality science out there as quickly as possible so it could be used and have an impact. I mean, that's what drives the researcher. So to me, you know, in my mind, I wonder if we were doing a better job of meeting the researcher needs and the community needs, would there even be a Plan S? There'd be no envoy. Although that word is a crazy word, candidly, but there'd be no envoy. So which gets to kind of the next thing I wanted to talk about And it all kind of will tie together as sustainability. And there was discussions earlier on about how you build a sustainable future. So given the changes with our customers and our market, it's really clear that we can't play the short game here. We've got to play the long game and prepare for the future. And playing the long game means you've got to put in place what I would call agile strategies. Yeah, you might have a vision of where you want to go, but how you're going to get there is going to change along the way because you learn as you go. You've got to get out there and test and learn to drive to it. That's how you build a better future. And candidly, when you think about when there's times of unprecedented change and complexity, which I would contend is what we're dealing with right now, I mean, that is when only the very nimble survive. And I want to share with you an interesting statistic, and a bunch of you might know this, but when you look at S&P 500 companies, life expectancy back in 1935, that was 90 years. That was the average life expectancy of an S&P company. Fast forward that to 2010. Anyone know what the life expectancy was in 2010? 90 years in 1935? Take a guess. Yell it out.
19 years.
What? 14 years. That was in 2010. There's no new stat on that, but the belief is that number continues to come down. So what does that tell you? I mean, it tells you that you've got to continue to be thinking about your business models. You've got to future-proof your business. You've got to think about disruption, and you potentially even need to think about disrupting yourselves. And so, and it's interesting, when I think about all this stuff, and again, have lived through a bunch of it and seen a lot of good success that comes out of it, I don't think there's any better example of agility and sustainability and building to the long term than Amazon. And I know there's comments up front, some people are not big fans of Amazon. I think they're freaking brilliant. I mean, beyond comprehension. Reflect back to 1994, Amazon, that's when Amazon was formed. They were an online bookseller. 1994, they were an online bookseller. So how many of us were booksellers in 1994? Right, a bunch of us. But you look at the change, I mean, and you look at what they've done in those 25 years, they are now a huge and diverse business. They're not just online books, they're online everything. Also a huge technology company. In groceries, they own Whole Foods. I love Whole Foods. They own Whole Foods now. And they have Amazon Web Services. I mean, do you realize that Amazon Web Services, they just took their own infrastructure that they were using for their online commerce and started selling it to other customers, and that's now a $20 billion business. Boy, brilliant. Another example of taking what you have, playing the long game, and thinking out of the box. But what is the one thing that makes Amazon different? And when you talk about the critical importance of having a North Star, and that North Star needs to be your customer, that's what Amazon is incredibly focused on. As a matter of fact, you talk to an Amazon employee, they will tell you they are literally obsessed with the customer. And that goes all the way up to Bezos. Matter of fact, if you talk to an Amazon employee, they'll tell you the most concerning email that they can get as an employee is one from Jeff that has a question mark in the subject box, and that question mark is basically tells you, this is an email that came from a customer, and I need you to drop everything you're doing, because it's a customer, and if it's a customer problem, fix it. If it's a customer opportunity, get on top of it, but I need a response back. That type of incredible customer focus is a big reason why Amazon is where they are. And again, it starts at the absolute top. And if you think about that approach, what an opportunity to capture, to truly understand your customer experience and your customer needs, to use that to figure out how you're going to build your future and how you're going to play the long game where you could be pleasing your customers. And so to me, when you're playing the long game and you're focusing on your customers' needs, you're really building customer trust. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, you've got to build customer trust. But to me, there's something even more important than customer trust. And this is what differentiates the good from the great companies, and that's customer delight. And so I don't know about you, but I didn't have my act together this Christmas, and I was delighted when I ordered a bunch of stuff on Amazon on December 23rd and it showed up on December 24th. To me, that's delight, and that's the stuff we need to think about. And I'm just curious, in the audience here, I mean, how many of you believe that we have been actually delighting our researchers? Anyone believe we've been delighting our researchers? Yep. A lot of opportunity. I want to give you another example of delight. Of course, I love Apple, even though their battery ticks me off because they really need to figure out how to make that thing last longer. But I have been so frustrated with those crazy earbuds that take 5 or 10 minutes to untangle to put them in your ear when you're trying to get ready to do a conference call. So I figured, okay, I'm going to spend the $159. I'm going to take the plunge and get the wireless earbuds. That's all I thought about. I had no idea that when you got those earbuds, and I don't know if anybody has them, you pop open that little box, you stick them in your ear, your phone recognizes immediately that you've got these things in your ear. Oh my God. And then on top of that, all you have to do is bang your left ear twice and you could talk to Siri, and she will tell you anything you want to know. She'll call your husband, she'll tell you the weather. You use your right ear, tap it once, you can answer a phone, tap it twice, shut it off, listen to your playlist by tapping your ear. How cool is that? So to me, another example of delight in Apple, boy, that cleanness and elegance of experience, that's something you remember. So anyway, probably went way too far on there. Obviously, you can see I'm passionate about the customer, so it kind of bothers me. Look at what we're about here. See that? I don't see anything about customer there. That's an opportunity or not going forward, because to me, at the end of the day, that's what we should be all about. So key thing is you got to focus on what you're good at, what you're known for, and then really take that to the table and work to strive for delight. All right, so now I'm going to get to probably the most critical part of the conversation today, and it's all about collaboration. And my core belief is, for us in this industry, collaboration is absolutely critical from a going forward perspective. And to me, and it's fascinating, I know there was comments about anti-competitive and antitrust and areas where you have to be concerned. And again, I've always worked for a competitive company, and I love competition. I love striving to be the best. I mean, I was a gymnast way back when, obviously a long time ago. And it's always great when you're competing against great competitors because you bring your A game out. And as a company, that's what drives you to really try to out-innovate in the market so you could win on behalf of your customers. So all that is really good, but there's also an opportunity where you really need to collaborate, and when collaboration is truly in the best interest of your customers. And so, and it's funny, when I think about this ecosystem that we all work together in, I mean, it is about as codependent and as interrelated as anything I've ever seen. And it's also ridiculously high stakes. I mean, let's face it, if we screw this up in any way, the impact is significant. I mean, the impact of garbage, fake research, getting out into the market is frightening. The impact of research not getting out in a very timely way could be the difference between life and death if it has to do with a critical drug or a cure for something out there. So what we do is so important. We've got to be so smart in how we work together in a coordinated way to make sure that in making stuff better, that we don't mess it up. And so while I believe it's critically important to compete, as a way to drive innovation, it's also equally important for us to figure out how we collaborate and work together. And it's interesting, having worked in telecom, and actually ran the broadband business at Verizon at one point, could you imagine if these telecom companies didn't have open standards and worked together on open standards? What our lives would be like right here? We'd have a stack of phones with us because you'd have to have a different phone to talk to different markets between different carriers. You'd need to have maybe different computers, whatever, too, to be able to access different internets. I mean, it's crazy. So open standards is a really critical way where industries that are interrelated need to be able to collaborate and cooperate. And so for us, when I think about this industry, yeah, there's a really long history of collaborating to solve customer problems. You know, when we say it's over 4 centuries, there's a lot of good stuff we have done, and it's all listed up there. I should have put up R821. So that's all good, okay? But my point is it enough? My contention, no, it's not enough. Because again, if it was enough, going back to my earlier comment, there'd be no Sci-Hub and there'd be no ResearchGate. And I'd even go so far to say that, Robert Jan, there'd be no Plan S if we were doing things in a different way. And it's funny that when I think about Plan S, and this is an interesting analogy, and I could probably say it as an American, and I think about some of the challenges associated with Plan S, where there's been separate factions in a really hard kind of dividing line in the sand. You know what it makes me think of? The wall, okay? It makes me think of this damn wall and what's going on in the US with the Republicans and the Democrats all on hardcore lines, dividing lines, when interestingly, if Trump hadn't said that we are going to build a wall and instead said, we have to build a future where our borders are more secure, wouldn't everyone have gotten, wanted to get involved in there to drive to a positive solution? Instead, it was framed out the wrong way. And so, interestingly, when I, and don't take this the wrong way, Robert Jan, but I really think in some ways, Plan S is almost like Donald Trump's wall, right? Let me follow. Oh, there's a good one. But there's an interesting part here, and in my mind, sometimes it's almost that you have to create a crisis or have to be overly provocative and extreme to get people's attention, because sometimes you don't get their attention if you don't do it that way. And again, I'm not saying Donald Trump is right, heaven forbid. Oh God, hopefully this isn't being filmed. Yeah, it's gonna be a really short career for me. I'll be moving to the UK shortly. But anyway, no, but I think sometimes there's a provocative way to drive sides to get together. But I really believe at the end of the day, if we're going to make great progress collectively, we need to do it collectively. And so to me, when I think in the past and where we've been with Plan S, which is a bunch of funders talking together, and I know there were comments here today, to me, we really need to have the whole ecosystem, because this ecosystem is so completely intertwined. That's probably the much better discussion to have. And I was at the STM meeting, and I know you extended the olive branch, but to me, in the spirit of my first quote, and you look in the rearview mirror and lessons learned, I think if it was done in a different way earlier, that maybe we could be further along. That's, again, my viewpoint there. But the point is, I see Robert Jan raising, looking up. But the point is, we're where we are today. All we have is the present, and then we could figure out what motivates us for the future and how we're going to get there. I mean, that, at the end of the day, is really what it's all about. And so, again, my bias here is we as an industry need to drive to more sustainable change. And open science is a really critical part of that. We need to get science out there, quality science out there as quickly as possible. We also need to be thinking about open standards and open data. Those are absolutely critical for our researchers. And we need to be able to think about evolving business models. And to go back to the earlier part of my discussion, our market is changing. And when your market is changing, if you really want to survive and have a great future, you should really figure out how to change with it, or even to drive the change. And so I think the good news is we all come together very collectively with this incredibly proud heritage of what has been accomplished in this industry, and it's tremendous. If you look at what we all do and the impact on this world with the quality research that is published out there, it's exceptional. But there's an opportunity for all of us to really do even more. And so how this translates from a Wiley perspective in terms of what we're doing, this kind of playbook that I talked to is exactly how we are approaching the marketplace. I mean, we have the clear North Star, and that's our researcher. And so to me, the most important thing to me, and from a Wiley perspective, I want to make that researcher happy. I don't want to make Robert Jan happy. You said you wanted us to make you happy. I want to make that researcher happy. But my belief is if we do, then you will be really happy. Everybody will be really happy here, and it will benefit science overall. We're also very much in it for the long run. I mean, Wiley's been around for 211 years, clearly playing the long game, and will be continuing to play the long game. And so what that means to me is we're going to be going out there and doing things different. We want to get out there and learn and grow and embrace our customers and take them where they want to go, and maybe even help lead them to where they think they want to go. But to do this, for us to do this, requires us to both compete intently, and again, competing intently is a really good thing, but it also requires us to collaborate and partner in a really different way. And so with that, and this is kind of the bigger discussion today, in the spirit of the researcher as our North Star, adapting to customer needs and market needs, taking an agile approach to the market and learning so we can build a very sustainable future together, and collaborating and partnering to advance the needs of researchers, open science in this community we serve. At 10:30 this morning, and matter of fact, when I think Robert Jan was up there speaking, we announced a very unique and exciting partnership with some of my friends in the audience here, with Project Deal, to address the changing research environment and the evolving needs of researchers that I just talked about. And so we have literally, I mean, I've got the team that's been working very closely with Project Deal here, and some of the Project Deal team members. We have worked tirelessly, very tirelessly at times, and very closely with Project Deal for over 2 years to build a partnership arrangement that acknowledges the importance of both reading and publishing. They're both critically important, and has the overarching goal of advancing open science, driving discovery, and developing and disseminating knowledge. And this cooperation that's between Wiley and Project Deal encompasses HRK, the German library system, funders, especially Max Planck Society, and the focus is to benefit all German researchers in the 690 institutions across Germany. And so what that means is all German researchers will have complete access to Wiley journals, and they will have the opportunity to publish open access in all Wiley journals. Really important, and again, this aligns with all the comments I just made, even about different companies. We both understand that we are at the very beginning of a journey together, and we are paving a really new, and I call it very exciting path for the future. And there is a lot that we are going to learn on this journey, but we each have the courage to take it and to test and learn and do it on behalf of the researcher and on behalf of the community we serve and on behalf of this important mission we have to make sure quality science gets out there as quickly as possible. So in this commitment to work even more closely together, there's a few other exciting things that we're doing together. One is we are going to be launching a flagship open access journal. Second, we're going to be establishing an open science and author services advisory group that's going to be completely focused on innovating around new publishing approaches. A group that's going to be focused on how you drive it to the future. And lastly, we're going to jointly host an annual symposium for that early career German researcher that's going to focus on what are the cutting edge ideas or tools for the future of this scholarly communications industry. So those three things are very exciting projects that we have jointly committed to. So when I think about this from a Wiley perspective, I was like, oh my God, is this different? Oh yeah, very different. Is it bold? Extremely bold. Do we have any doubt that there's going to be bumps and bruises along the way? No, I am absolutely sure that we will have bumps and bruises, but I'm even more sure that we will learn a lot. And as a result of doing this, we will be able to take this industry farther. And so I'm just thrilled to say both Wiley and Project Deal are extremely committed to working together in a mutually beneficial way to benefit open science and open research. And so with that, I'm going to go to my final quote. And I said it was an important day, so you have to have 2 quotes. And my final quote, and I went on this crazy mindfulness journey a few years back when I realized that I was doing way too much, completely stressed out, thinking about the future, not living in the moment. So someone had recommended Kabat-Zinn's book, Full Catastrophe Living. And I have read the cheese book. But anyway, Full Catastrophe Living by Kabat-Zinn is an amazing book about mindfulness. And matter of fact, he's the father of mindfulness-based stress reduction. But I love this quote that he has. And it's one of those, it applies personally. And at the time, to me, it meant a lot personally. But it also applies hardcore from a business perspective. And it is really relevant today. So the quote is, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." And I do want to let you know that Wiley is surfing, and we are having a great time. So with that, I thank everyone for your time and listening. And I don't know where we are time-wise. All right, so that's it. So thank you very much.